Hey everyone, and welcome to the Retro channel. Today we're taking a look at this Commodore 1541 that I bought off eBay. Now it was sold as for parts not working, and I did briefly plug this in on the midweek mini update that I put out for patrons. And yeah, it's definitely not working. So let's plug it in again and see what it does. And while I'm at it, a shout out to Tim, who recently signed up to the Captain Blood tier on Patreon, and shout out to all the other patrons new to the channel and old. Let's plug this in. I did make a quick note about what's going on, but let's just demonstrate it. So powering it on, the driver light just stays on and I can hear it's just spinning away. So this usually points to an issue with either the ROMs or some kind of logic fault. And when I took the top cover off, I noticed there was some what looked like burn marks in the top of the case. So let's pop it open again and see what's up with that. So yes, there is what looks like a burn mark in the top of the case and some dead ants by the looks of it. Yeah, heat mark on the top lid above UE6, which is this 74LS193 just here. So maybe it's got something to do with that and it's been slowly cooking away, because it does kind of line up just where that IC is. The IC itself looks perfectly fine though. Let's just plug it in again. If it's getting hot enough to do that to the lid, I imagine this thing's going to heat up pretty quickly. It still seems cool to the touch. In fact, nothing is catching on fire that I can feel. The disk drive motor sounds a little bit rough. Like I said, this was sold as for parts not working, so at least the seller was honest that it wasn't working. I picked this particular one out because, as you'll notice, it's got the flap at the front that goes down. So this is the Alps mechanism, and generally these are pretty reliable. There is also the Newtronics mechanism, which usually has a little lever that you twist on the side. The Newtronics drives tend to have the read-write heads go open circuit. So once that happens, there's pretty much no fix for it. It's usually the fine coils inside the read-write head that actually go open, and unless you can do some kind of microsurgery to it, there's no chance of resurrecting it. So I usually look out for the Alps ones, and if their solder's not working, that's perfectly fine. But if it were a Newtronics drive, I definitely want to make sure that it was tested and working. I wouldn't buy a non-working Newtronics one in the hopes of fixing it. Right, well, I think I see the problem. Have a look at this guy just here. That is a tantalum cap. And yeah, it has gone black and toasty. So that probably explains why the top lid has a scorch mark in that area, because that pretty much lines up with where this guy is. I thought it was related to this, but yep, that makes a lot more sense. So a shorted tantalum, obviously that happened before the disk drive was in my possession. In fact, I can probably look up the eBay listing because I think they did have a picture of the internal drive. Yes, the listing does show that that tantalum was already scorched. It's not the best quality picture, but you can just make it out. The other thing I'm noticing is this capacitor here looks like it's actually shorting to the legs of this IC. I think it's been pushed over, and yeah, it very much looks like it's shorting to those legs. That could be what's holding the drive in the constantly spinning state. Yes, that capacitor looks like it's shorted to that second leg on this IC. That could explain something as well. What I'm going to do is simply cut this tantalum out. It probably just does some power filtering, so we should be able to run the drive without it. I'll obviously replace it though. Let's just get in there, snip that guy out. A nicely charred tantalum. And while we're here, let's just power it up with that short still there, see if it behaves the same. And it does. It's just spinning away. Let's lift this off. So I guess somebody must have hit this from the front maybe and pushed that over. it is still just spinning, so that wasn't the issue. Probably should pull this board out, replace that tantalum, and maybe check this transistor, because that looks like it got a bit of heat from the tantalum when it exploded in flames. Now, when removing the connectors on the drive, I do like to mark them because these are not keyed. So if you forget which orientation they were in, you can plug them in backwards quite easily. And down the bottom we have our massive transformer. That's pretty much where all the weight from these things comes from, and most of the heat. And of course these voltage regulators build up a lot of heat too. So first of all, let's do a quick test on this transistor over here. That looks like it's charging up a capacitor. 0.297 seems fine. 0.566 is probably ideal. 0.57, 0.297 again. That 0.297 could just be because there's another transistor almost in parallel to it. So those two. But yeah, those figures seem okay. There's definitely not a short there. Seeing as this board is a little bit dusty, I might just go outside and dust it off. Yeah, the vents in the back of the 1541 drive sit pretty much here, so all of this stuff will always get super dusty. So let me go clean this board off. Alright, so I gave the board a quick dust off, didn't spot anything else that looked to be out of the ordinary, so let's replace this tantalum. Now, I did have a look through my very small collection of tantalums, and I managed to find one that is a 10 microfarad 16 volt. Looking at the schematics, the capacitor at C15 is a 10 microfarad 25 volt. So I'm hoping 16 volts will be enough, but I guess we can test that before I go sticking it in. So I've just quickly hooked everything back up just to see what voltage is going to be across that capacitor. So the drive is spinning away. It's going to see about 12 volts across it. So 16 volts should be okay. You usually want to go an extra, I think it's 25% over what the maximum you see on that capacitor is going to be. So 16 volts should be okay. At least it's not going to explode instantly, I don't think. Right, now of course the tantalums have the positive leg marked, so you want to make sure you get that right, otherwise it will also explode in a little fireball. I guess the other option here could have been a electrolytic capacitor, because I'm pretty sure I've got plenty of 10 microfarad 25 volt electrolytics, but usually if they've put a tantalum in there, it's for a reason. Alright, replacement tantalum's in. The positive leg is going towards the positive marking on the board, so hopefully the silk screen's correct. Let's plug this back in, see if it goes up in smoke, works, anything, who knows. Alright, let's do a quick power on, see what happens this time. The drive is still spinning. Can't really say I expected that to fix it, but it's worth a shot. Might have to bust out the scope. What I'm going to do first, because there's two 6522 VIA chips in here, I'm just going to swap those positions, see if that makes any difference. Otherwise, we'll get the scope out and start probing some signals. Just a little bit of contact cleaner in those sockets for good measure. Right, with the VIA swapped around, do we get any difference in behavior? Nope. Drive motor is still spinning. Yeah, it's worth a shot. Alright, so that chip that had the capacitor shorted over it is an NE592. And looking at the pinout, the leg that it was shorted to is apparently not connected anyway. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to make a difference. It's used, I guess, in this application as a floppy disk head amplifier. So I really doubt that even if there was something wrong with that, that it's going to be causing the issue of the drive not to be booting correctly. Let's just start off using the multimeter to check some of these things, because I know not everyone is going to have an oscilloscope at hand. But at least we can get an idea of a couple of these signals. So looking at the CPU, which is a 6502, we should see pin 40 should be high at the moment. Right, my bad, I just realized that the frame itself isn't connected to ground, so I've just hooked it on one of these ceramic caps, which definitely is. So yeah, there we go. The CPU is getting 5 volts and the reset pin sitting at 4.3-ish. That seems to be okay. It's definitely enough to register a high. So yes, the CPU is coming out of reset. So that's not going to be the issue. I think it's definitely time to bring out the scope. Alright, so with the oscilloscope, let's take a look. Let's just look at that reset line again. Oops. So yeah, it is sitting at 4.24 volts, perfectly normal, I think. Let's check clock signals. So there is a clock signal out of the 6502, and on pin 37 there should be a clock signal in. So 39, 38, 37. There is definitely a clock signal coming into the CPU, and it is 1 megahertz. That's perfectly fine. So we do have clock. CPU is getting power. That's over here somewhere. Is that it? Is that it? There we go, 5 volts. Let's just have a look at other activity. And looking at the address bus, everything is sitting around 4 volts by the looks of it. And then looking at the data bus, same kind of deal. Everything is stuck around 4 volts. So there's pretty much nothing going on the buses. So yes, there is no activity going on in this drive at the moment. Why? Right, so staring at the schematics a little bit, we can see here's our 6502 here, and all the data and address lines head straight to UB4 and UB3, which are the two ROM ICs. So what I'm thinking is just let's pop out the ROMs, or maybe just pop out at least UB4, see if that makes any difference. All right, so now that address line is sitting low, as is that one and that one, and some of the data lines. So definitely a different behavior, but is that just because it can't address the ROM and doesn't know what to do? Let's just clean out this socket. Now, one of the fairly common reasons for this fault is a bad DOS ROM chip, so maybe we'll just try and read these in the Mini Pro and see if we get anything from there. Alright, so I've got the Mini Pro out, or TL8662, whatever you want to call it, and also an adapter that I made a few months back and I did show on the channel, so I'll link to that video up there. It basically takes a 2364 and translates that to a 2764, which is readable by the Mini Pro. The Mini Pro doesn't support 2364 chips, but this adapter will at least allow you to read them back. You still won't be able to write them because they do require a higher voltage. So we put our 2364 ROM in the adapter up the top, and the rest of it plugs straight into the Mini Pro. And we have our little tower of power. Let's take a look. So I'm going to set this to 27C64, dip 28, that should be fine. Doesn't really matter which one you pick as long as it's a 27C64. We'll turn off pin detect and check ID, and then we should just be able to hit read. And I can see that, yes, there is definitely information in this ROM. There's some readable ASCII text as well. So yeah, this ROM appears to be good. Let's check the other one. This looks a little weird. Yeah, a lot of the same values. I think could just be a bad connection. Let's try that again. Nope. This certainly does not look like the correct output for this ROM. A lot of F3s. So, there's a very good chance that this is a dead ROM chip. So what that means is I'm going to have to burn a new ROM, which will be a 2764. So that means I need to make another one of these adapters so that I can convert the socket on the main board, which is only 24 pin, to a 2764, which is 28 pin. So thankfully there's a pretty easy way to convert a 24 pin ROM into something more common like a 28 pin ROM. And to do that, we just need a little adapter. This particular adapter is by restorestore.de, but you can make your own thanks to our channel sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay can manufacture prototype PCBs along with CNC machining and 3D printing. They even have a shared section where you can find projects like this 2364 adapter. So why not head over to PCBWay right now and get your quality PCBs at a low price. We thank PCBWay for sponsoring this video. So now we have our adapter board, it's just time to build it. All we need is a 28 pin socket and some round pin headers. Don't use the sort of chunkier square pin headers because you will bend out the socket that's on the actual board. So try and find these sort of thinner round pin. And what we need here is 2 strips of 14 pins. So I just use the board to work out how long they should be. And then we can just copy that. Cool, we're ready. Now in order to make sure our pin headers are perfectly aligned so that they're not twisting at an angle when we solder them into the board, you can use the socket here, stick the pin headers in, and that will pretty much align them so they're straight up, so that when you solder them into the board, they're not going to be at a weird angle. What I actually prefer to do is use a round pin socket for this, because their tolerance is a lot tighter. So using a round pin socket means that pretty much has to be exactly straight. So we've got the socket on the bottom, the long side of the pin headers is going into the socket, and the short side of the pin headers is sticking up through the board. Then we just solder these in place. There we are, done. We can now remove this lower socket and we have perfectly straight pin headers. All that's left to do now is put the top socket on, making sure to align the little notch with the notch on the silk screen. We can just sit that flat on the table and solder. And within a couple of minutes we have a fairly professional looking 2364 to 2764 adapter. Let's program one of these. Right, so we can just throw our 2764 straight into the Mini Pro. It's already set to the right IC, so we'll just do a quick blank check. And device is blank, so we should be able to now program this. Let's see if we can find something on Zimmers. So it looks like Bo has collected a whole bunch of different ROM versions. I guess we should go for the original one that was in this board, so 901.229.05. And our ROM has been downloaded. We just need to load that into the Mini Pro software. Here we go. And now we can just hit program. Flash is programmed. I like to hit program just one more time, just, I don't know, because I'm weird like that. Cool. So this should now be a fully functioning version of one of these. All we need to do, put it in its little adapter. And put this back in the drive. All right, here we go. So this was this one. And here's our replacement. With any luck, it will fit. Of course it will. That's it. All right, let's see what these lights do. Aha. We have a flashing light there. That's different. So yes, there is inbuilt diagnostics in the 1541. We get 3 flashes on the drive LED, so let's have a look at what that means. Alright, so according to the service manual, 3 or 4 flashes is indicating the possible failure with the DOS ROMs, which is those. Bringing back the scope. Let's just look at a random address line. Ah, there is definitely activity. Okay. But not... Oh, yep. Alright, so we've got activity on the address bus. Oh, and a lot of activity on the data bus. That's promising. Let's just see what this guy's doing. Oh, yep. Definite activity everywhere. Is it just that it's not making good contact? I'm just going to kind of push it off to the side. Ah. It stopped spinning. So I'm getting 3 flashes, but if I sort of push this, it's no longer flashing and the motor is stopping. So I think it's just a bad connection on that socket. Yeah, it is now reliably powering on. Let's see what... yep. Plenty of normal looking activity on the address buses. This looks much more promising. And given the fact that the motor's not constantly running and the drive light has turned off, I think this may just be working now. Obviously that connection on this socket is not great. And if I just push it back like that, yeah, it goes back to 3 flashes. So I might just need to replace the El Cheapo sockets that Commodore used. But yeah, just tilting it off to the side stops it from flashing. So yeah, this is a good sign. I'm going to pop this guy out, which is already very loose. And yeah, take out this single wipe El Cheapo Commodore socket. I don't know what it is, but lately this desoldering gun just isn't cutting it. I've cleaned it out multiple times, made sure everything was tight so there weren't any air leaks, but it's just being shit lately. I might have to look into one of those hacker ones. So, hot air it is. Alright, so the hot air definitely did the job and got the old socket out. It did leave a pin behind, but that's no problem. We can get that out fairly easily. There it goes. Alright, I'll give that a quick clean. Now, what I'm thinking is, because we've already got this adapter and it's got a socket on top, why not just install the adapter directly onto the board and we've still got a socket. It's not like I'm ever going to put an original DOS ROM back in this board, I don't think, so may as well have it sit flush. Let's put our EEPROM back in. The heads look clean, so I don't expect to get any dirt off them. Give them a quick wipe with IPA just to be sure though. Yeah, nothing. Cool. Alright, let's power on the disk drive. So the motor spins and stops and the drive light turns off. If we power on the Commodore, it should send a reset signal to the disk drive. So motor spins and stops and the drive light turns off. Let's just try and load a directory without a disk. That's pretty expected behavior. All right, let's put a disk in. Cool, that seemed to work. This is the Wonderland 13 demo, so it's a bit of a stress test for the disk drive. It relies on pretty accurate timing. And it appears to have gotten stuck. Normally there's some text scrolling up through the middle there, and I can see the disk drive is just spinning, so music's still playing, but it's not going any further. Let's do some diagnostics on this drive. So I'm going to be using the 1541 diagnostic cart from World of Janny, and yeah, let's just see what we can see. So speed test shows the drive is running pretty much spot on 300 RPM, so that's a good sign. Let's run the alignment check. So for this you need a pre-formatted disk, preferably one from Commodore like the 1541 test demo disk. And we're just going to do alignment check. Right, that looks good. So all the track numbers match up. The third column should always have 100% in it, and the fourth column is like the between track read. Sometimes you get it on 0, but most of the time it won't stay on 0 for every track. So no big issues there. Let's do a performance test. Make sure this disk is blank first. Yes, it is. So we need a disk that we can write to, so make sure you don't have anything useful on the disk. Well, it made it through the performance test just fine, so I don't know if there's anything actually wrong with this drive. I did run the Wonderland 13 demo again, and it hung in the same place. So I also went back and just swapped the logic board with a known working 1541. This one has the same logic board as this one. So even swapping the logic boards over, it's still hung in the same place. So maybe there's an issue with the mechanism itself, but for everything else, it's been rock solid. So I don't know. Maybe it's just that the drive I used to write these disks, which could have been that one, could have been a 1541-2 that I've got. Maybe that drive is just slightly out of alignment and this drive just doesn't like it for some reason. But yeah, all the commercial software that I've got seems to load and run just fine. So that's kind of about it. I do want to give the case a clean up and that kind of thing, and maybe lubricate the drive rails, but apart from that, this thing seems to be working, so I'm happy to leave it as is. And I guess on that note, that'll do it for this one. So as always, thanks for watching the Retro Channel. A massive thanks to the channel supporters on Patreon, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye. See, that loaded just fine. Never mind.